First of all, it's a privilege to talk to you all, and I'd like to tell you about the Oxcam Arc. Now, a lot of you, in fact, most of you, are not from the Oxford-Cambridge area or the Five Counties, and so why is it important to you? There are two reasons, really. First, the Oxcam Arc is an example of a regional development plan, a multi-county development plan. And regional plans could be coming to a region near you next. The Oxcam Arc is very much the test bed of a new regional development programmes. And the second reason is that investment in one area of the country, in this case the Oxcam Arc, is investment denied elsewhere in the country, because investment is a zero-sum game. There's only so much investment coming into the country, and if it goes in one place, it can't go in another place. Now, this is a sort of traditional feeling of development. We have a lovely green countryside, we run roads through it, and roads are actually decided and determined to open up green fields of development. And we'll see an example of that later on in the talk. But let's look first of all at the area. This is the Oxcam area, the five counties of the Oxcam Arc: Oxfordshire, Bucks, Beds, Cambridgeshire, Northampton, and Peterborough is of course part of the Cambridgeshire large authority. And we've got about 4 million people in the Arc at present, and we occupy about 8.6% of the area of England, 11,000 plus square kilometres. Now, Oxcam Arc plans will add 1 million houses to this area. It's a 66% increase, and it will add almost 2 million more people, a 51% increase in the population by 2050. This is a very, very rapid development. In 2018, the government produced this document, Partnering for Prosperity, and it defined essentially the 5 pillars of Oxcam Arc development. We increase infrastructure in points 1 and 2, a railway and an expressway. We increase the number of houses, but the point of all of those first 3 is to increase the number of jobs locally. And by the way, we've got pretty full employment at the moment, so if we add more jobs in this region, we have to suck workers out from other regions of the country. And then the prize at the bottom is a 163 billion increase in economic output. And that is the thing that drives all decisions about the Oxcam Arc. Now, in March of this year, the government cancelled the Oxcam Expressway, but we'll see that another group has come to effectively find or give us the expressway in all but name, another expressway in all but name. Here we have a map of the country, and you can see the Oxbridge Arc, the Oxcam Arc at the bottom here in pale blue, and the Office of National Statistics predicts that by 2050 the country as a whole will grow by about 16%, and that will need maybe between 3 and 4 million more houses. Up to 1 million of those will go into this very small part of the country. And the question is, why should more than a quarter of England's housing growth in 2050 go into less than a tenth of the land area, which is already congested, which is already suffering the sort of shortages that Annie mentioned about water and power? We're about to run out of power in parts of the Arc, and we're going to increase populations and houses by 50% by 2050. Here are the Arc plans in a nutshell. Houses, well, they're going to put lots and lots more houses. Roads, there isn't an expressway, but there will be more traffic. The economy, the government is claiming a Silicon Valley effect for the Oxcam Arc. The environment, well, we can have all this development and we can have a greener Arc. We can make the Arc good for nature. And finally, the communities across the Arc will be involved in the democratic decisions deciding their future. Quite frankly, all 5 of these promises are wrong, and I'd like to explain briefly why. Let's look at houses first. This is a graph of the growth through time of the population of Buckinghamshire. Here's the total population on this axis, and here's years from the Domesday Book here in 1086, and nothing much happened for centuries. Then, of course, in the last century, the population grew up to the 2011 census. All of the Oxcam Arc plans and the current local plans will drive those numbers up according to the red line. We have an upswinging curve here with absolutely no sign of any limits to growth. That's Buckinghamshire. Here's Bedfordshire, exactly the same. This is growth to the 2011 census, and this is what's planned under local plans and Oxcam Arc. And finally Oxfordshire. Oxfordshire is really in for it because the Oxcam Arc plans will double, more than double, the entire housing stock of the whole county. And the question that those 3 graphs show or raise is, are there really no limits to growth? Do planners think there aren't any limits to growth? And Kenneth Balding said that anybody who believes in exponential growth, which is what this is, can go on forever in a finite world is either a madman or an economist. And Balding was one of the latter. He was the economist rather than the madman. Let's look at roads. England's economic heartland is a regional transport body, and it's decided to look at enhancing corridors within these oblongs here. There are about 10 corridors on this map. We've got Cambridge here, we've got Oxford here, and they want to increase connectivity along these 13 corridors. And when asked, well, what are you planning along these corridors, we've been told, well, these additions and improvements are only to meet existing needs. Now, I think you can all guess that these areas are pretty congested at the moment. If you develop a road system network only to meet existing needs, when at the same time, within EEH's, England's Economic Heartland's version of the future, there will be 860,000 more houses, then you've really got a problem. You will have all these extra cars from all these extra houses, and you're developing roads only to meet existing, this is the 2020 needs. It doesn't add up. It is totally illogical. There's currently a consultation on 2 corridors. The third thing is the economy. We're promised the Silicon Valley effect across this arc of innovation. The question is, do we actually want a Silicon Valley? This is the real Silicon Valley in California. It's about 50 kilometers long. It's actually shorter than the arc, but it's got about the same number of people at present. But let's look at the Silicon Valley as it was in the 50s and 60s. It was a grape growing region, a wine producing region of California. This is what it looks like now. This is the overdevelopment of Silicon Valley, and this is what's been happening in the last few decades of Silicon Valley. They have created more jobs than houses. House prices have increased. Some of the founding fathers of Silicon Valley simply left because it got too impossible to work there. And a survey in 2016 showed that half of the residents actually wanted to leave the Silicon Valley. It was just impossible. Things were too expensive. Is this really what we want for the Oxcam Arc? Saving nature. We're promised that we can have all this development and we can make a greener nature. We've got an initiative from RSPB here, Nature's Arc, be a part of it. We've got the 100 Miles Wilder initiative of the wildlife trusts. And Cambridge Nature produced a document saying they wanted to put nature at the heart of the growth agenda for Cambridgeshire, which was the first suggestion of doubling nature, and the doubling nature idea was later adopted by the Oxcam Arc Environmental Group, which is headed by Councillor Bridget Smith, who promises us the sustainable economic growth and the enhancement of the environment are compatible and achievable. No, they're not. Let's look at an example. This is an example of what you might, or what the developers call, a good development, because it's a standard developer, and I don't particularly want to single out Barratt Homes, but Barratt Homes in the development I'll show you worked with RSPB to improve the development of a normal building site to achieve net gain within the building site. Let's see what happened. First of all, this is a satellite image of the site, and you'll see developments about Broughton, which is east of Aylesbury, from 2003. Over time, there's satellite images over these years. Let's see what happens and concentrate on this area here and then finally on the top right. And first of all, before any development, this was the sort of greenfield site that Annie was talking about in her talk. This is the image in 2006, 2017, 2018, 2020 and 2021. Let's look at those again. Greenfield sites essentially to housing. Now, of course we need houses, but is this the way to do it? In total, there will be 2,500 houses when this scheme is finished on, as I said, greenfield site. Let's zoom in. This is some of the literature that the estate agents produced, the builders produced, and they promised a wildlife-friendly development. Well, look at the picture. That looks pretty much like development as usual, doesn't it? Where's the wildlife? Well, the RSPB came in and suggested, let's put some bird boxes, let's put some bat roosts, let's have hedgehog highways, drill holes through fences, let's have swift bricks in the construction, and house martin nests. And here's a detail of house martin nests. This is a concrete lined cup for house martins to nest in. This is what's being offered. This is a poor substitute for nature, but this, the RSPB was quite happy to greenwash this development for the developers. And the developers claimed within that development there was 60% of allocated land to open space. This sounds good, doesn't it? Open space for nature. Let's have a look at that open space for nature. This is a view of the developed part of Kingsbrook so far. A great number of houses and not much green space. There's a green alleyway here, but there's tarmac either side. On this long view here, well, there might be 60% of open space, but much of that open space is tarmac and concrete. Is this really the best we can do in our future development sites on greenfield land? Now, very recently the government has opened up the debate to members of the public, saying, what do you think about ARCs cum ARC developments? What they haven't told us is that all these documents have come out since Partnering for Prosperity in 2018, thousands of pages of documents on houses, transport, the environment, power, water, the economy, specifically the ARCs cum ARC. And yet in July this year, they've launched this ARC Spatial Framework consultation with 3 key documents. This is the most important one, the consultation document, which says not a thing about the number of houses, jobs, or the economic performance aimed for by the ARC development. Absolutely nothing. It simply says, would you like green development? Would you like clean water? Would you like fresh air? Would you like healthy communities? To which, of course, the answers are yes. Only an idiot would say no to the vacuous questions asked in this public consultation. And they are claiming to us that your responses will help us to shape the policy of the ARC. The question is, will they? Because whilst this consultation is going on, absolutely unbacked up with any information about ARC growth plans, builders, developers, property developers are planning one of a whole series of events which have been going on for the last 5 years about the opportunities across the ARCs cum ARC. There's a 2-day event in November, and it's got a very packed agenda with all the great and the good of the development industry speaking at it. This isn't a blank sheet of paper. These people are already planning all of our futures, and they're not telling us about it. There's a property developers meeting in last month, in which Bev Hindle, who's the chair of the ARC leadership group, announced to the few of the great and the good, the property developers present at that meeting, talking about our own campaign, saying what our campaign didn't acknowledge, because they are not communicating very well, is the ARC is about promoting better change, better outcomes, better life opportunities. And then he went on to say, this is a real serious problem. If I'm up here telling an enlightened group, notice that term, enlightened group, how the world is going to work, Bev, aren't we deciding it? But 90% of the people don't even know what the ARC is, then we've got a problem. The ARC leadership group, of which he is a chair, are unelected representatives from local authorities, local enterprise partnerships, and the 9 ARC universities. And if we have unelected bodies deciding our future, then not just they have a problem, all of us have a problem. The 4 million people who live across the ARC at the moment. And that is why we need to work together to stop the ARC in its present form. Thank you very much.